I make my decisions on the council bench. So it's good information, good feedback from our citizens. Thank you all for being here. With that, JD, it's your show.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. You have a motion to approve the agenda for today, February 3rd. Second. Motion second. Bear signify by saying aye. Motion is aye. Agenda carries. Approval of minutes for January the 6th. That's actually a long year. It's 2020. It's all right. 2020, we'll change that. Approval of minutes for January 2020. Motion. Second. Any corrections, deletions? No. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Anyone have anything off the agenda item from the board? Nope. We'll go right to the updates. Mark.
Thank you, JD. I don't have a lot to discuss tonight. First of the year, midterm, the new mayor. So we're trying to learn a lot about him and get relationships going. So we started off with the only thing that we've really done so far this year is started with the legislative agenda in Topeka, and started with that, the new session. And then we'll be going to DC in March for the federal agenda. We heard an interesting presentation workshop last week on BNR, which is biological nutrient removal. This is Brandon Sturm's water treatment plant number 2, wastewater treatment plant number 2. This is one that's down south. It's going to be a total rebuild, and looking at 400 million, 355, 400 million. It basically handles about 75% of the wastewater of the city of Wichita. And so it's built into all of our projections, so it's 20 years old already. So we've got it accounted for, but we're just now beginning the process of getting something designed and going out and so forth. So really not a lot to start the year, but looking forward to a productive one.
Where's the 25%?
So there's a couple of other wastewater treatment plants in our district here, 135th and 37th. That's the Cowskin. And there's the 4 Mile Creek one, which is way out east, at about 143rd and 20. And there's one more at the airport. But since everything else, gravity goes down, that's why it's the treatment. Number 2. So,
Any questions for Brian? Hearing none, we'll move to staff reports. Start with the fire department. You win the lottery, you get to go first.
All right. Well, good evening. I'm Captain Roland. I'm Captain here at Station 21 on day shift. I have the figures for December's alarms. Made a total of 257 alarms in this fire district. 8 were fire alarms, 37 were service alarms, 212 were medical alarms. So it's pretty much standard numbers for this time of year. Nothing high, nothing low. Everybody's doing a good job. They're having a lot less car wrecks, so that's always positive. When springtime coming, just want to remind everybody not to drive in high water. Cars are not ships, not boats. So be safe out there, and
Thank you. Please.
Officer Odd, representing Patrol West, 16, 199, and 19 beats. I have 16 beat and I have 199 beat. Officer Kimberly, of course, on 19 beat. Obviously, just 1 month, and so it's hard to look what the numbers look like. And crime analysis didn't give me the numbers. I had to dig them out, so I'm not as good as they are. So hopefully I got close. But for just going over stats real quick, on 16B, we're up 25% crime from this time last year. Larceny from autos are up, burglaries are up, but none of those crimes are violent crimes. No robberies, no ag assaults, are all property crimes. The numbers on that were 35 last year total versus 45 this year. On 19B, they're down 7%. Year to date, the number's 32 last year versus 30 this year. Larceny from auto up, auto theft down, burglaries down. And 199 beat, they're down 10%. Larceny from auto up, auto theft down. Numbers 43 total last year versus 39 this year. So what was common among the three beats? Auto thefts were down on all three beats. Total this year 12 versus 20 last year, so that's good. The bad news is larceny from auto is up on all three beats. 45 this year versus 24 last year, so they're way up. On my beat, on 16 beat, my primary beat, many of those are coming around 8405 West Central. That's part. That was a big spike for me in the apartment complex in and around St. Francis Church around Socorro. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. I did open up a crime trend on 16B. It centers on 900 North Rica. 5 recovered stolen autos right there in the neighborhood. I recovered 3 of them myself. There is a particular address we're looking at. 8 larcenies right there in that area, and a burglary today over on Hickory, which is real close. So like I said, we've identified the house, but we're in the early stages of working that. Another thing on 16B, the homeless population is continuing to move out west. Just got a call for 8525 West Central. That's the old Simmons Bank. When we were there were 2 of them that were actually camped out in the little nooks and crannies of that building. And then I also have one at Central Ridge in the car wash. One individual that sleeps in there. So Simmons has been cooperative as far as trespass situation, but Central Ridge, I'm not getting any cooperation with the owners. So he's going to stay. He's going to stay until we do something else.
Which corner?
It's the old Circle K. I don't know what the Circle K owns it, but it's what the southeast corner, or no, northeast corner.
Northeast corner. Okay. There's the old self-service car wash on the west side.
Right.
This is the old Phillips Circle K on the east side. Okay.
And then we're doing some traffic enforcement on Ridge Road from, on 13th Street from Ridge to 135th. So big long stretch. But we're getting those complaints. Penny, any questions? That's all I have.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, I'm Roger Davidson, Superintendent of Recreation for Parks and Rec. We'll give an update on several things that we have going on right now in the Parks Department. One of the things we're working on now, I'm sure you guys have heard about National Park. We're getting pretty close on opening for that. Doing planning for programming for that. There will be some events that's happening for the 150th anniversary for the city of Wichita as well. We also want to bid for a company to provide ongoing services and projects there. And it was awarded someone that's going to be managing that process, and we'll be working in conjunction with them to do activities there as well throughout the year around different events that we have planned for the city. Another thing kind of in line with what the officer mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if you guys have heard that we had an event that happened this past weekend down at Lenmore Park, where we had a fire at one of our shelters there. Had someone encamped there that started a fire in one of the roller cart trash cans that consumed the building there. and it did over $200,000 worth of damage to the facility. So looking at what the next steps are going to be with that, whether it's actually demoing the facility or even going and looking at options to rebuild it. And the next thing we're kind of working on is over at Cloud Park now, working on doing some activities and things out there in that green space. Opening up where we're doing some disc golf, looking at doing some disc golf leagues in the area there as well. To kind of activate that park and getting more people out active and engaged in doing things there. And the last thing I want to report about is kind of a new thing you guys are going to hear coming out here pretty soon. We're in the process of rolling out a new recreation management software and doing a combined joint guide between City Arts, Parks and Rec, and Library. So we have one comprehensive site where you can register for all of those programs online. We have one guide that'll come out with all those activities that will be displayed here in the city at 150 different locations. We can actually pick the guide up there. And it allows us a lot more flexibility with the system there where you can do online registration for facilities as well as registering for programs with each of those 3 departments with one username and password. So it's a little easier, a little bit more convenient for the community to use and give them a full spectrum of all the programs that we have to offer to our city. So, Stan, if anyone has any questions.
Questions, Reg?
So we got a presentation on new software and compliant magazine and so forth last week at the council meeting. It looked to be very sharp for it to make it a lot easier for citizens to engage with libraries, city arts, downtown, of our party programming. So it should be very nice. Also, the printed guide. So having 3 different guides, now there'll be 1. So it saves cost that way, and also just make it a lot easier. So, does that coach move out this spring?
We actually go live with the software system on the 10th of February, and then the guide will be available after the 17th. So it'll be
Thank you.
Thank you, Reg. Fun library. Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Partridge. I'm the manager of the Westlake Branch Library. The first thing that I want to let you know is all Wichita Public Library locations are actually going to be closed on President's Day. So please don't come expecting any of our services except to return your materials. Another thing that I want to let you know is, does anyone here actually listen to audiobooks? Okay, so we have a couple. One thing that the library actually just recently added to our collection are downloadable audiobooks through our Overdrive service. If you have the Overdrive app or Libby app downloaded on your smartphone or tablet, we have added over 400 audiobooks that you can listen to. Basically what we're going to be doing is every week adding some more, but they actually have 200 that are simultaneous use ones, so multiple people can actually utilize them at the same time. The rest are actually New York Times bestsellers and really popular fiction and nonfiction and things like that. And you need a Wichita Public Library card in order to use that service. You need the app, and you can check out up to 5 at a time. And you can also play up to 10 a month at a time. Another thing that I wanted to mention, does anybody watch the Academy Awards? Nobody likes the movies here. This is so sad, people. We got to go out and watch our movies. We're doing our 34th annual Academy Awards Short Film Festival at the Wichita Public Library. Tomorrow night at the Westlake Branch, we're showing the animated and live action shorts, and that's going to start at 4 and run through 7:45. And then, does anybody here like donuts? And if everyone does,
Yes.
so we have at least one person who likes donuts, and then I saw another one, yay. Does anybody have children in their family who are between the ages of 2 and 8 and like donuts? Okay, so we're gonna be doing a donut story time on February 11th at 6:30 at the Westlake Branch. We're actually gonna be eating some donuts, so it's gonna be awesome. So if you have children between the ages of 2 and 8, and they like donuts, which I'm surprised more people did not raise their hands, then please come. Another thing that we're doing is on February 23rd at 2:30 at the Westlake Library, We're doing a program called Alzheimer's Disease Know the 10 Signs. We actually did a program in the summer, and we had over 62 people attend, which is a really good attendance for an adult program. So it is actually a topic that's of interest to our community, and an Alzheimer's Association educator is actually going to provide that program. And then the final thing I'm going to mention, does anybody play board games? Okay, I am starting to wonder what you guys do. Okay, but on February 29th at 2:30 at the Westland Branch Library, if you have children and teenagers between the ages of 7 to 17, you can come and play life-size Clue. So not a dinky little board game, a big one where you are actually the physical pieces. Okay? And that, again, is February 29th at 2:30. Those are just a few of the activities that we have. You can actually visit our website, wichitalibrary.org, and get a comprehensive list. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. If you ever need ideas for activities, which it seems like you do, I am your host.
Thank you. Public Works and Utilities.
James Wagner, filling in for Gary tonight. So I've got a list here, a lot of stuff. Go through a few of these. We do have a lot of maintenance work going on in this area. A lot of residential streets. I'm not going to go over all of these streets, but Central, also in Tyler, Mays, 37th, 29th, 21st, Ridge Road, all are on board to have some sort of maintenance done throughout this next year. That can be anywhere from crack sealing to actual larger mainline repairs and overlays. We're moving forward with the Hoover bike path. We're trying to get the signal materials ordered on that a little earlier so that we can get the signal in maybe a little bit earlier than the bike path itself. It will take a little while to get properties for the bike path. So that's in the works. Same thing with 37th and Tyler signal. We are looking at trying to get signals ordered. Those signals right now are delayed more than what they used to be. We're looking at almost a half a year from the time you put your order in until they actually show up on site. Before that's one of the things we're struggling with right now is delivery times from our material suppliers. One of the projects that's come up here before, 29th and Mays intersection, I believe we've got a very nice suggestion from Mr. Rios here. Yeah, about actually extending our work over to the west side of the intersection. We did incorporate those plans. That's a very good idea. Thank you for speaking up. That is getting ready to proceed. 13th Street, that is finishing up, getting ready to bid here sometime in the spring as well. I don't know the exact dates. That's from the 135th out to Asia. I don't know much about this project. I didn't have enough time to get updated on this. We are looking at moving forward for the Socorro traffic calming project, where there were letters sent out to property owners.
Yes.
And we're gonna do a little trial process where we're gonna put some delineators in the middle of the street to keep people moving through the streets.
So Socorro is 2 blocks east of Tyler, between Maple and 2nd. And it's a straight through street. There are no turns that section. It's all driveways, and it's become very quick paced traffic through there. Too fast than what it's supposed to. Gotcha. So I'm going to try to put some delineators in the center, a couple of spots just to slow traffic in and see if that will help. Kind of like what we've done in some other places where you see these white posts that are glued to the street. They got orange tape on them. It just really creates a visual distraction of areas that people hopefully slow down, see if it works. I don't know if it will, but a lot of it has been, I think a lot of it has been cut through traffic because we've had construction on Tyler between Maple and 2nd, so people are using that as a way to get to avoid it. We'll see. So that's what that project is.
Sure, yes, okay. And I guess with that Westport traffic concerns, it looks like we're looking at some sort of a similar circumstance over in that area. Let's see here. The rest of the stuff's fairly small. We'll touch base
I was on the WAMPO MTP selection committee, which selects projects that allow us to get funding for federal dollars coming into the city. We did get selected to be on the menu, which is basically the option to select those projects for 22 different projects. They range anywhere from bicycle projects all the way up to mini 1-mile sections of roads. So it was pretty successful, better than what we've done in our last group. I'll answer any questions, but I don't have much else.
It's kind of slow right now, this season.
It's-
Potholes is the biggest thing that we're dealing with.
You're gonna see a lot of stuff picking up, it looks like, as far as like actual road maintenance, so.
But right now, it's just trying to keep that in potholes. So,
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to receive and file staff reports? Motion and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Downtown Streets Conceptual Plan update.
Hi, I am not Scott Wade, but I'm Jim Watson. I'm with Nelson Nygaard, we're a consulting firm that's been working with Scott Wadle as our project manager with the city. We've been working with the city on a downtown streets conceptual plan. So it's kind of a high-level planning study of how all the streets downtown work. It's we're kind of working our way through all the data, trying to give you all an update on where we are with the project, kind of what we've seen. I'm going to talk a little bit. Let's see. I think I got this on.
it's jumping.
It's selected the PowerPoint presentation.
Sorry.
This is the PDF, so you just click on the screen to the right.
There we go. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our process, walk you through some of the concepts, and then we can, if y'all got any questions or anything. And I apologize that these maps are kind of small. We're going to post this presentation on the project website, which I've got the address here at the end. So, if you got any more information, or you want to look at this a little more in detail, on our project website. But our project bounds go all the way up to Murdoch, over to Washington, down to Kellogg, and basically to McLean, but we're not really studying McLean. Our process, we started just kind of going through some previous plans, talking with the city. We're kind of in a little bit of a loop between this desire, which is us hearing from the community, kind of how y'all see these streets evolving, and the design. And so we're kind of working on some design and desire, and then ultimately we're going to kind of document everything with that. We wanted to take a step back and look at how some of the streets downtown functioned in the past. Streets have evolved over the years, and we even see here, some time ago they were very much thriving. And as we started this whole thing, we tried to develop a few goals that kind of looked to the past, looked to see where y'all are going in the future. And these were the goals that we kind of developed through an iteration of some public meetings that we've had, through talking to city staff, looking back at some previous plans that y'all had here. And we've been trying to use these to guide us as we work through some potential concepts. These are the things that we've done over the past year. We had a public kickoff meeting in Old Town back in February of last year. It was about this time last year. We took a pretty detailed look at Douglas Avenue in the spring. We were here in June, and in conjunction with Riverfest, we kind of did these open design sessions that we invited the folks to come in and work with us on what we were doing. And then we were back in September, did a pop-up tent at Open Streets, and we kind of did some stakeholder meetings along the way. These are just kind of some pictures. We have some comment sheets over here somewhere. If anybody would like to kind of submit a comment, feel free to take one of those. You can email them in, or I can take them, or we can get them over to Scott Wadle at the city. So going future, we're here in February, we're doing the DAB meetings. If you're really interested in this project, March 24th, we're going to be hosting an open house downtown. We're still kind of working out the actual details of that, so just kind of stay tuned for that. But we do have a date set for March 24th. And then going into further into the spring, we're going to be issuing a draft report and talking to the city council and then coming back to the advisory boards and doing a formal review process into the summer. So with that, I'll just walk you through some of the concepts that we have. I know this is small, and I apologize. Like I said, please look up the whole this from our website. We're going to be posting it later this week. But we started off taking a look at how all the streets currently operate. The different colors that you see there, the shades of orange, or how many lanes there are on different streets. You can see here where bicycle lanes are. We looked at where one-way streets are, where parking is. Just kind of give us an idea how things are functioning today. We also kind of looked at how like the bike network and the transit network kind of intertwine with one another. Right now you've got the transit center that functions kind of in a pulsing manner where the transit routes all kind of pulse in and out of there. Use those one-way street networks kind of almost in a pinwheel fashion. And you've got a little limited bicycle connectivity south First Street. We took a look at traffic volumes, and we wanted to kind of know where the heavier traffic volumes are. And if you look at this, the darker the color is higher traffic volumes, lighter color. This is just what you would see on a day. The highest traffic volumes we actually saw, it's probably not a surprise to any of y'all, but it's kind of down on Washington as you approach California. We then took those traffic volumes, because we didn't want to look at them in isolation. We took them and kind of compared them to what the daily capacity of each street should be. And so when we looked at this, we saw that most of the streets in downtown Wichita are actually built fairly large for the amount of daily traffic that they carry every day. We know that there's some pulses and kind of rush hour traffic that need to be accommodated. So those are some things that we want to kind of continue to think about as we continue working through this. And so we started thinking about, because some of those streets are built bigger, we wanted to think about, some of the benefits of 2 to 3 lanes versus 4+ lanes. When we have 4+ lanes, we can get traffic through quicker, and they're really good for traffic under 25,000 vehicles in a day. The 2 to 3 lane sections give us some safety benefits, slows traffic, walkable environment, which can in turn kind of put a few more people on the streets themselves, give a little bit of economic boost. We also wanted to compare one-way streets versus 2-way streets. The one-way streets can kind of get traffic through a little quicker, can accommodate some higher capacities when need be. But because of kind of the one-way orientation of some things, people will kind of get on these circuitous routes to get to where we need to go. We've heard from some business owners downtown that have said, we get people from out of town or folks that don't come downtown a good bit, sometimes get lost coming to or leaving our shops. So we're kind of trying to see, are there some benefits to 2-way streets? On some streets like Market or Speaker or Emporia, just to kind of see what those might look like. A couple of examples of some things that have been done in similar sized cities. This is Chattanooga, Tennessee. They took a street that was just right on the edge of downtown Chattanooga, and back in 2003 converted it from a one-way to 2-way, which slowed down traffic, but they still had a little bit of a safety concern. And then a little over a year ago, they went from a 4-lane section, which you see up here on the top, to a 3-lane section, which you see on the bottom. This is actually the same section there, but it kind of added a little more vibrancy to the street. Another example that kind of gets thrown around in our planning world a good bit is Main Street in Greenville, South Carolina. And back in the 70s, Main Street was kind of wide open. It was a 4-lane through street. And what they did was they made an investment in that street, narrowed it up to try to kickstart some additional retail and vibrancy on that street. And what you see here on the far right is how it is today. Now that took some time to do that, but you know, they've actually recently extended that across their river to their minor league ballpark. It's on the other side of the river in Greenville. So as we start to think through this, we think about kind of balancing things and trying to see, you know, if we can get gains in livability and how that swaps off with changes in vehicular service. And we keep going back to these goals and want to kind of think through these. So with that, we kind of developed a potential street typology map. And once again, I apologize, this is kind of small. You know, one of the things that we've tried to keep in mind through this is the city is getting ready to start on a plan to upgrade the traffic signal synchronization downtown, which is going to kind of be key to implementing some of this as well. And we know that'll have to dovetail with any of this plan, should any of these plans go forward. And also the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan, you know, that's been kind of up in the air. So kind of trying to figure out what's going on with Maine and Douglas and Waterman through that area is a little bit of a moving target at this point. So we're you know, trying to be aware of how that might change as well. We're also kind of trying to be aware of planned developments. There's a lot going on. We know there's going to be more going on in the future. And ultimately, we're kind of trying to look and establish a grid that's safe for all users, whether you're in your car, whether you're on transit, whether you're walking, whether you're on a bike, or even if the scooters stick around. And transit's even kind of indicated to us that they want to move to a system that really uses the grid more than that pulsing manner that I talked about earlier. One of the big things we've really looked at and wrestled with was potential one-way to two-way conversions. What you see in green highlights here are the corridors that we looked at, mainly north-south corridors. We've looked at kind of going east to west, Emporia, Topeka, Market. We are in the process of looking at the north side of Maine, north of Douglas. We don't really have much to show on that one just yet, but that one's one we're still looking through. And then one east-west street you see there is English, which we think is probably a little bit of an easy lift. Emporia as a street is one that y'all currently have some funding in place to do, and I think there's some looks to move forward with that fairly soon. There's a lot of cues taken from this from St. Francis, just to the east of there, and how that worked out. And it's produced some thriving businesses there along St. Francis, and it's more walkability along St. Francis. So this would somewhat mirror what you've seen on St. Francis on Emporia. And we went to this detail of kind of, and this is just a concept, but we went to this detail of concept on Emporia because that was one that was kind of moving forward a little quicker. Market and Topeka we've been looking at. Currently they carry about 2,500 to 6,500 vehicles a day. And the amount of traffic that could be carried on those roads, given the size of them, is 20 to 30,000. So, you know, we're just trying to think about, you know, some of that circuitous movement that I talked about earlier, and trying to see how we can use that space. So we consider, you know, how that might look if you made those two-way streets. Maybe able to even pick up some additional bicycle lanes. I know this is a lot to process here, but it just kind of gives you a little idea of how we work through this process. So Market and Topeka, you see there, what we've looked at is block by block, what the width of those streets are and what you could potentially do. Once again, these are just kind of conceptual ideas we're doing, but we're looking to see how bike lanes and parking and then the through lanes may just actually work on a block-to-block basis. This is kind of a similar idea on English. You just have 2 lanes of traffic and parking on either side. in English, connecting the Century 2 Riverfront Legacy Master Plan area over to the arena kind of seems to be a easy lift. We know there's been a lot in the news about Douglas lately. There's some plans, there have been some previous plans floated for a 3-lane section of Douglas on the east side. We're just considering what that might look like if you did that in downtown. So that's something we're kind of continuing to think about. That would be a potential 3-lane section with parking and then bicycle lanes on the outside. And once again, kind of Douglas, in terms of the volumes, are kind of carrying much lower than what the daily capacity might suggest. But you know, it's one of those things we would want to plan for, you know, how traffic moves at peaks as well. And we've looked at some concepts for that. One other one that I wanted to talk about was Broadway. We've heard a lot from the community about people avoiding Broadway because they're a little confused about the center lanes, because it's 4 lanes. We've got the center lanes kind of function almost like a turn lane. We've heard a lot about some people avoiding Broadway because of some of that conflict. So what we proposed is moving that to a 3-lane cross section, 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane and parking on either side. Winding those lanes out a little bit better to better accommodate transit, and trying to maybe slow down traffic a little bit there and promote some better walkability and economic vitality through there. And we've looked at some concepts for that. So I guess just to kind of sum up, once again, we're March 24th down. If y'all are more interested in this, we're going to be hosting an open house downtown, and please keep a lookout for more information on that. Here's a website, it's wichita.gov/downtown streets. This presentation is not on the website yet, but we're going to be posting it this week. So if you want to dig into this website or this presentation, feel free to take a look later this week. We've got some comment cards back there. If y'all got any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions for Jim? Sure.
Sure. I was just wondering, how do you calculate like their capacity for roads that like urban?
So Federal Highway Administration kind of has a standard capacity for urban roadways. And that's kind of the standards that we use for those. And these are looked at more on a planning level, kind of higher level planning level. When you actually kind of dig in and actually start designing the street on these, you kind of get into a more peak hour, which means your morning and afternoon rush hours. So, you know, as we're looking at this at a high level, we're kind of looking to see what the capacities tell us on that end, but trying to kind of inform ourselves, knowing that at some point down the road, this is going to be more detailed designed on any of these things.
You also use density of what's in that neighborhood in terms of office workers and residences, you know, who's in that population. So.
Yeah, I mean, so we would, you know, take a look at, you know, the driveways that are currently there, and also kind of think about where the development's going to be in the future, to try to kind of help inform us how that may shift a little bit in the future.
The type of road also that variable, whether it's paved or.
Yeah, I mean, really kind of your biggest differences are urban and non-urban, and then kind of freeways, a little different. You know, gravel roads would kind of be kind of your tail end of some of those non-urban roadways that you might examine.
In your density map there, it showed that Douglas is one of the most heavily used, and it looks like it's one of the most heavily used kind of east-west streets between McLean and Washington. So I'm curious as to why you would consider reducing traffic capacity on what is currently a main thoroughfare between Delano and
the Douglas Design District?
So one of the things we wanted to keep in mind here is not only what the traffic volume is, but what that traffic volume is relative to the capacity of those lanes, like we were just talking about a second ago. So when we took this comparison, we compared the 5 lanes that you have on Douglas today to what really your highest point on Douglas right now carries about 15,000 vehicles a day, and that's just west of Main Street from the traffic volumes that we have. And for a 3-lane cross-section street, typically you don't look at going to a wider street till you get to about 25,000 vehicles a day. So it kind of leads us to believe that, on most of the day, it's overbuilt for what it is. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have surges at peak times, at lunch, in the morning, in the afternoon, that need to be accounted for, possibly at the intersections and some different lane treatments at some of the intersections to allow for turns.
And does your planning, though, take into consideration the fact that some of these streets, far more than others, are used as major connections between parts of town?
Right. I mean, and that's something that we've, struggled with a little bit on this. I mean, you do have some streets that act as through streets. And I think that's one of the trade-offs that we have been looking, when we're looking at the goals here, in terms of whether you want to try to slow down traffic on some of those main streets downtown to try to activate them a little bit more with pedestrian or more business activity, or you want them to function as a through street. And those are some of the trade-offs that we've been kind of wrestling with on this whole exercise. And Douglas in particular, it's a difficult question. It definitely is.
Any other questions for you? Thank you.
I appreciate it. I apologize, I got to scoot to another desk, but like I said, the comment card is out there.
Okay. Thank you. Next we have Philip.
Good evening, Gavin, and members of the public. My name is Philip Ziegenberg, and I'm an associate planner in the Fulton Area Planning Department. We got 2 cases for you tonight. First is the conditional use case that's coming to you after it went to Planning Commission. It was heard at Planning Commission on January 23rd. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this conditional use case. The applicant in this case is requesting a conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit on a property that's zoned as a single family. The property is located north of 21st Street, just west of 119th Street, so it's about 3/4 of a mile to the east of here. It's in the Cedar Downs addition. The applicant is looking to add an addition onto a garage that is detached from the main dwelling unit, and they're looking to put an accessory dwelling into that addition onto the garage. The Unified Zoning Code does allow an accessory dwelling unit on single family per the conditional use, so they're going through the correct process in order to do so. The addition would be about 30 feet wide by 60 feet deep and attached to the middle building. The garage is the middle building. Staff is recommending approval of this. There are several conditions for accessory dwelling units that have to be met per the zoning code. The first of which is that it has to stay under the same ownership as the main property. There's no way for them to separate it out to sell it. In addition, there's one that has to have the same appearance or compatible appearance with the main character of the neighborhood. All the utilities, public utilities, water and sewer need to be under the same ownership. That kind of goes into the same idea of not being able to sell it out as a separate dwelling for a separate tax parcel. And those are the main high ones that kind of combine a few of them together. Again, like I mentioned, Planning Commission did recommend approval of this through the discussion at the Planning Commission meeting. The metal building on the property versus the character and the nature of the dwelling unit, the main house are very different from each other. And this garage, which is a metal building, has been there for some time. And so there's discussion on whether or not this attachment to the garage, being metal, needs to look like the house. Because that's what the zoning code says. And,
Basically, the long story short with that is, in the recommendation of approval, the planning commission extended the ability to waive the appearance standard for the main dwelling unit and said it can be compatible with the garage. Since the garage has been an existing structure, we don't have appearance standards for accessory structures. So if you put a shed in your yard, if you put a detached garage, there's no appearance standards. There's only appearance standards for them if they're accessory dwelling units. And so since it's an addition on the garage, they felt it probably be very out of character to try to make it look like a house or try to do treatments to the garage to make it all look kind of updated. So they're recommending that standard be waived. In addition, these properties are not served by public water or sewer. They have wells as well as septic systems. They're larger lots, really in their backyards. It's the county's on its land there. And the applicant has 2 private wells, and one of them is used for irrigation. And it would be a fairly burdensome cost to try to tap into the well that serves the house versus using the secondary well that's already existing that he currently uses just for irrigation in order to serve the accessory dwelling unit. In addition to having its own septic system, which he's working on with the public works department as well as stormwater and all that to make sure it has enough space. So they're requesting a waiver of that because it's just a unique situation. They're all on public water and sewer. Obviously, you can't have separate water and sewer brought to this. It's just having it to the wells that you have and using the septic type system that is found on larger lot residential. So because of these waivers, this case will be going to city council regardless of protesting, because the city council is the only ones who can make the approval for the waivers. They will schedule this probably about a month from now, is usually about where we're at. The protest period for this case ends this coming Thursday, February 6th. If there is anybody that's opposed to this, they can file protest petitions with the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the 6th. Like I said, it is going to city council, so that really kind of doesn't matter. If it is protested with 20% of the land area around it, then it would just require city council to have a 6 to 7 vote versus a simple majority. And with that, I can stand for any questions.
Have there been any protests from any of the papers in Cedar County thus far?
Not that I'm aware of. I know there were some neighbors who have called in with some questions, just wondering what was going on. And that's it. From my understanding, it doesn't seem that there seems to be any too big of concern because they are, just making an addition on an existing building. We generally don't find out about protests being filed until like the day after the protest petition, and then usually the city clerk will then say, here's the protests that were filed. So this is not a case that I've been looking at precision on behalf of another plaintiff, so I apologize if I don't have any up-to-date information about the reaction or the concerns of the neighbors. But the way it went through planning commission, it didn't seem that there's too much concern about the existence of the accessory dwelling unit.
And the Cedar Down subdivision doesn't have any restricted covenants, that's right.
I'm unaware of that, and even if they did, those are private covenants.
Okay.
Yeah, and those are private, so they're kind of separate things. If they're private covenants, restricted apartments from being constructed, you would hope they would abide by them. But if they did, that would be a private meeting separate from the planning commission.
I can tell you I live right across the street from this property.
Okay.
You can't see it.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Bill?
Any questions on this?
Anybody from the board first? Then we go. Okay. Any questions for this one? No? Okay. You just had a motion to approve the target.
I'll make a motion.
Motion second.
Yeah.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, next one.
Before I get into the staff report, I just want to preface this zone case The applicant in this case is requesting to rezone the property to what's called a planned unit development, which is PUD. Planned unit developments are custom zoning classifications, so each PUD that we approve throughout the city looks very different from each other. The purpose behind them is to allow mixed-use type development that would not really work well in one of our standard zoning classifications like general commercial or limited industrial or something like that. And so this allows us to have flexibility within our zoning code to take uses that aren't specified with each other in the zoning classifications and realize, well, they can kind of work together and basically come up with a custom zoning classification that works. So that even equates to what uses are permitted, what the setbacks are, what landscaping requirements are, stuff like that. So we don't necessarily throw the little bit out the window, we just use it as a basis for which to form a zoning classification unique for this site. So that kind of in the back of your mind is a good way to look at this, as it doesn't follow necessarily standard zoning rules. We kind of make up the rules for this site based on zoning classifications we have, and we kind of modify them. Each PUD basically has a base zone that we go off of, and that's basically to say if we don't cover all the rules and regulations in the document, we say there's a space zone, so if there's a question, you can always go back to that to say if there's nothing else stated about it, we can use the base zone as our rule to go forward. So that in the back of your mind, let's jump in. There's a lot of detail on this case. We do have the applicant for the agent here, so if there's specific questions about the uses and things going on in this, I know the applicants are here themselves. They can probably speak to a lot more about the specific of the uses on the site. I'll do my best to discuss the general provisions in this guiding document that was produced, seeking recommendation. There's quite a bit of history going on with this. It's already been the Planning Commission once, but their recommendation at that time is to defer it, and so that's why it has not been before you up until this time. And so I'm going to try to just kind of step through it. It's probably been a little longer presentation for me, but just to kind of help everybody get on the same page with a bit of a complex rezoning that we have going on. This site is located south of 21st Street on the west side of Maze Road. If you know where Catholic Church is, we all do. They actually share a property line with them on the south side. If you know where that, if you go south on Maze Road on 21st Street, you get past Wendy's. Then there's like an orthodontic and a dental office. If you go west of that, there's a house. If you go west of that, that's where this property is. There's actually an old construction site still at the access point to into this site. So it's kind of tucked in there, just before you get to the first housing subdivision going south on Maze Road. So I think there's a site plan or kind of an aerial view in your staff report to help you orient where this is at. As I mentioned, they're looking to rezone it to PUD. It's currently zoned single-family SF5. There's a mix of commercial uses going on in this site, and the purpose through this is to bring the site into compliance with the zoning code. They've been operating out of compliance with the zoning code for some time. The uses currently are a pet waste removal business. Just to note on this, they're not disposing of the pet waste on the site. They're, as far as I know, they are taking it off-site and they're disposing it. They're just having some of the actual business center be there and using it as a launching point. A vehicle repair and refurbishment business. They work on refurbishing golf carts, and I think they work on party buses as well. A construction business, outdoor storage business, and storage of personal property. So recreational vehicles, boats, things of that nature. Before I get into kind of the rest of the staff report, which goes into what kind of happened at the last planning commission and some of the revisions that have done, let me turn over to the general guidelines. I'm not going to go through point by point. I'm going to kind of hit some of the most important ones that kind of tell you what will be governing the site building that's going to be unique and custom. As I mentioned before, we did look at the base zoning. For this site, we're using a base zoning classification of office warehouse, which is a step above limited commercial. With that, all of the uses within office warehouse are not appropriate in this area. So there's a list of prohibited uses such as animal care, auditorium, stadium, recycling, collection stations, recycling processing stations, asphalt and concrete plants, tattoo and body piercing, safety service, which would be like a police or fire station, wholesale business service. And one of the revisions they made from the last planning commission is adding a dry cleaning service to this list. So dry cleaning added to the list of services prohibited on this site. The list of permitted uses, so it would say all uses permitted in OW, except for those that we just listed that are prohibited. In addition to, because with office warehouse, some of the uses we're just about to talk about are permitted by right, and that's single-family residential duplexes, assisted living, church or place of worship, parking or ancillary drive, vehicle and equipment sales, vehicle repair limited in general, and outdoor rental and sale of equipment. The purpose behind stating some of these specific uses that are permitted is not only to allow some of the uses or cover some of the uses that are existing right now, but also thinking into the future as any changes to this document have to go through the public hearing process. And so they're thinking ahead of what could happen on the site in the future, and what can we have, what kind of provisions can we have in there to minimize the amount of amendments that have to happen. One of the things that was brought up with the vehicle repair is that they would like to potentially put in a paint booth to help, do some of the painting work on site. That was a topic of discussion with the Planning Commission last time of the concerns related to the proximity of the residential uses. In addition, the church property has a daycare that's on the south side of the building, so nearest to the site. It is separated by a distance with like a parking lot. There's some concerns there, so they added a revision in the text saying that a paint booth would have to follow any state, federal, and local regulations, and those are put in place to ensure safety and compatibility with neighboring uses. But they wanted to make a specific mention of that, so that if they would put it in there, it would be an enforceable condition within the governing document. Going on to the screen, anytime you have a non-residential use but up against residential use, like a residential zoning, I should say, there's some mandatory screening requirements, and we're following suit with this. At a minimum, there's going to be a 6-foot privacy fence, wooden solid screening fence that's going around. This has to be updated from what it is now. It is not currently in this condition, or the west property line does not have it at all. It has a fence, but not a privacy fence, and some of the fence along the south property line needs to be rehabbed and replaced. There's some gaps in some areas that have to be put into place, and the applicant understands it's going to be their responsibility to put it in. If this zoning goes into play. In addition to the screening, there's going to be landscape buffers on all 4 property lines with a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees, spaced 30 feet apart from each other. Each property line will have a different depth. The southern property line has the deepest landscape buffering, with the east, north, and west property lines will have this same depth as 10 feet, and that's just to help minimize the visual impact of commercial uses up against residential zoning. Standard lighting language, and that's to restrict any exterior lighting to 15 feet in height, and it all has to be pointed and directed inwardly to help minimize light pollution on neighboring properties. The building setbacks, we will have a 35-foot setback on the south, a 30-foot setback on the east, and then a 10-foot setback on the north and west property lines. If it is for non-residential users, which it currently is now, there will be no outdoor speaker system permitted on the site. Any building signage will have to be no taller than 10 feet off the ground and is not permitted to have any internal or backlit illumination. There will be no electronic display signs allowed at all anywhere on the site. The architectural, if any new buildings were to be built, they have to be within the same character and likeness of the existing buildings on the site. A drainage plan is going to be submitted to the city of Wichita. That's probably going to be the planning process, which is a requirement of this. And I think that takes care of the high points of the general provisions. Last thing I'm going to go into is just kind of bring you up to speed on what some of the discussions have been and where we are today and kind of what staff is recommending for the future. As I mentioned before, it was heard by Planning Commission. It was done on November 21st, 2019. There were several members in the audience who spoke in opposition to this case. Their concerns generally consisted of noise, odor, and the compatibility of uses within the proximity of residential uses on the east and south side. One chief concern that was raised, and it was brought up by the property owner directly to the east, is that there's a gate that prohibits access to the property And there was a time that there was a backup of traffic because somebody could get a hold of the person who opened the gate. And it actually restricted and prohibited any ingress or egress from the property, from the neighboring property, and that was a pretty big deal. Though there were no revisions in the PUD text in the meantime between then and now, dealing with the gate, I have talked to Egypt with the applicant, and they have installed an automated gate to help remedy that issue. So I don't know the form and function of this gate. I'll let the agent or the applicant address that. But it sounds like it's either like a garage door opening thing or maybe a fob or something more automated. They don't have a physical person come and open the gate when it's closed. So it should minimize any type of a traffic backup on this access drive in front of the neighboring property. There was an additional comment, I'll just go over this briefly, about a potential erroneous error on the zoning map that was identified in 2006. Really, it has no bearing on this case, whether there was one there or not. There was no proof that it ever existed. But the idea was, it was brought up that at one point in time, they thought that this was actually zoned general commercial, and that's what kind of precipitated some previous uses on the site. I've included a zoning map in the staff report from 1999 that showed it's single family SF5. It's actually a very back page if you're looking at it. Single family SF20, and the hue of paint actually is fairly similar to the general commercial. So maybe somebody just got it wrong. But either way, it has no bearing on this case because back in 2006, it was a separate owner. So when these owners took over, I believe in 2017, to operate commercial uses on this, due diligence that have been done to realize it was not a commercial property. Just a comment, more or less that was brought up in the planning commission, and so we just addressed it there. There's some zoning history on this. The long story short with that is there have been a couple separate attempts to rezone this property. Both have been approved by city council in the past with the stipulation that the property was platted within a year, and they never met the platted requirement in the zoning was affected. So this is not the first time that this property has been looked to be zoned either PUD or some type of commercial. It was neighborhood office was one of them. Planning commission as well as city council said yes, and they just never platted in time. We're actually not putting a time restriction in the planning process this time. Just because that was something we assumed in the past. We have several cases in our office where was extracted because people didn't plat the property and their zoning was ever perfected. There is a conditional use on here from 1974 that basically allowed a storage building for ag equipment and the storage of ag produce, as well as earthworking equipment, including trucks and tractors and this and these stuff, and that still applies to this property as well. Overall, staff is recommending approval of this zoning. Our findings for this, the zoning around everything directly abutting this property is single family SF5. As I mentioned before, you have the housing subdivision to the south, you have this residential property to the east. The north and the west sides is the pathway property. You have the church directly to the north. They actually own the property to the west that is undeveloped at this point in time. The property could remain single family SF5, however, given the access to get back there, just kind of the landmark nature of this, it'd be very hard to redevelop this as residential. Just with it's 3 acres, you could have a house on 3 acres, you could have a couple duplexes, there could be something to be done. But the request to have a PUD for commercial uses isn't necessarily unreasonable. Considering the proximity to the corner of 21st and Mays Road, which has a significant amount of commercial property, including things as high as general commercial. It is not necessarily an unreasonable request for them. Staff feels that with the requirements that were stipulated in the PUD document for the screening and the landscaping, with the signage and potential details that should minimize the impact for the surrounding properties. This property, according to our long-range plan, is identified for new employment, which encompasses the concentrations of manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, construction, research, business services, and corporate offices. So it's not necessarily out of line with where our company the plan sees the city growing house you can grow in 2035. So that's what I've got for you today. It goes to planning commission again this coming Thursday to be heard, so you guys get to hear it first. which is probably, we wanted it to go this way around for the second time anyway, because the first question they asked and the potential contingency spaces with the gap setting. So, as I said, we have the agents and the applicants here. They can answer some specific questions about the site. I can stay for any questions you might have for me, staff.
Any questions?
That was a lot of detail. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry. Yes.
Any questions from the board? If not, we'll go to the audience. We'll go start with the group.
You want that presentation pulled up? Yeah. Let's work. Good evening, Joey Denke with MKC Engineering, agent on behalf of the applicant. Like Philip mentioned, I do have the owners / or applicants here as well, which they can answer any questions that you guys may have. We agree with staff comments. Philip did a great job explaining kind of the case. It is a unique piece of property, and it kind of goes into more of the history of the property, and I just kind of wanted to just list out a couple things in kind of the history time frame, just to kind of get a good idea of what's going on. So like Philip mentioned, it was the former Kirk excavating business. In 2017, Yoga Holdings purchased the property. And they have a few different businesses there currently that they're using for the site. One of them, like currently shows the golf cart guy, is the Scoop and Do, which is the waste removal business. Party Express in Tulsa as well. So I think it's very important just to kind of see the property. Like Philip mentioned, it's just south of the Pathway Church there. It is landlocked, so you've got the east residence just directly east, and you've got the medical offices just abutting Maze Road, and then the residential to the south. Just to kind of recap the access easement on the south, that is a private access easement that goes through the property. And it's to benefit the east residents as well as the subject property. It runs with the land, so they will always have access to that property from that easement there. I will kind of go into little details that the owner had an attorney just kind of look through the easement just to make sure that if there's any requirements as far as types of vehicles and things like that running through the property, and there's no restrictions in regards to that. Also, like maintenance responsibility, there's a little bit of confusion who would maintain what portion of the access drive. It is not under the owners, or it's not their obligation to repair or maintain that drive. Although if they ever wanted to, they have a right to go in there and to maintain or improve it, but it would be, they would split that maintenance of that drive itself. So I think it's very important just to kind of see that the property in relation to everything, and then I'll kind of go into the history as well, because it kind of explains what was happening. So early on, back in the 60s, there was nothing out there. It was out in the county, and it started kind of with the ownership, the Kirk family. They owned the subject property, the east residence, the offices, the church property, and then other property as well. The east residence was built as a personal home as well as an office. And then, like Philip mentioned, there's a conditional use on the property, and it's allowed for that construction excavation business company, as well as a non-agriculture storage. Later, the subject property was developed for the construction business, and so it included a workshop, office, warehouse, and storage buildings. Further down the line, East Residence was sold, and prior to doing so, an access easement, actually 2 access easements were established for that drive on the south. And again, it just runs with the land. It's to benefit the East Residence as well as the subject property.
So 87, the east residents and subject property were deeded to Kirk Excavating Company, and it was occupying the site until 2017 when the current owners purchased the property. Further on down the road, the 90s. So to the south, it was developed and platted into single-family residential. The church was developed to the north and annexed into the city. The offices adjoining Mays Road were annexed and platted as neighborhood offices, and as well as subject property and east residents were annexed into the city of Wichita. And I think this is just kind of important just to see that, you know, they had a excavating company established there, and then residential kind of formed to the south and church to the north, as well as the offices to the east. Kind of going through the timeline, and there's a lot of things happening, so it took a lot of research just to kind of understand what was going on. So I'll kind of go on down to 2005 and 6. So like Philip mentioned, the subject property in the east residence, they went through a zone change. It was approved, although it was never enacted due to the plating stipulations. And then again in 2009, they went through the zone change again. It was approved, just never got enacted. 2014, the east resident, it was sold to the current owner that's there now. That access easement carried with them, so there's still that access easement where they can it'll benefit the east residents as well as the subject property. 2017, that's when Kirk sold it to Dova Holdings. So at that time, there's a little bit of confusion. It was represented that similar commercial uses could be conducted on the property. So it was under their understanding that, you know, their usage, they'd be able to do the similar type uses. So they began using the property for various businesses. They became aware that they were not in compliance with the zoning regulations, so that's kind of where we are today. We're going through this PD process just so they're in compliance. So they're not wanting to develop the site in any different way. They're just wanting to get it to compliance with the zoning so they can continue their usage with, you know, what they're doing today. So, and I'll kind of go through their uses as well, and Philip mentioned these. But again, the vehicle repair and refurbishment business, it's owner operated. They do the custom golf carts and as well as the party bus operation. So basically they bring in a bus, they strip it down, they turn it into a party bus, and they ship it out. So very light traffic is moving through there. It's just, you know, when they do bring in a bus and they work on it and they send it out. They do have a little bit of storage while they're waiting to restore these different golf carts or the party buses. Second business is that pet waste removal business, owner operated as well. So the office site for the business is there, and they also store the pickup trucks on site there. Low traffic, you know, and again, the owners can kind of go into details if you guys have questions, but basically employees come in, go to the office, they'll get in the trucks, drive away, they go to various locations, pick up the pet waste, and then they take them to a off-site facility, dispose of the pet waste, and then they just bring the pickup trucks back to the office there. So low traffic. And then kind of lastly, they lease out a portion for a construction business, outdoor storage, and personal property. So basically it just operates out of a small office, and they have a storage of some of the equipment and materials, limited RV and boat storage, and low traffic as well. We kind of went through the numbers. They did a traffic count just to see how many vehicles were coming in and out of the area, and on average, last couple months, it's about 8.6 vehicles per day. So as you can tell, it's just low traffic going through that site.
Phil did a great job going through all the PUD provisions. I just want to echo that, we've been trying to work with some of the neighbors and just listening to their concerns. So we wanted to incorporate a lot of that into the PUD so it's compatible with the neighborhood. And the owner's been doing an excellent job at that. So if we are not supported, currently what's allowed on site is whatever is under the conditional use, which is the construction and excavation business. So this, you could potentially still have large excavation equipment going across the land. This is not what they're desiring. This is not what they're wanting for the property. Also, as Philip mentioned, is single family. This is something that is currently zoned there, but this is not what they're wanting at all. We feel like this is not a good desired use for this property. And a lot of it is due to the access. And then the high traffic volumes along Mace Road, it's not an ideal point of entry for this, for residential. And then traffic going along that private drive or road would increase significantly. So here's a plan of what a residential little neighborhood could look like. Per this 2017 National Household Travel Survey, if there's 14 houses, that represents about 120 trips per day going through there. So this is, again, not something that the owner is desiring. This is not what they want. They're just wanting to continue their use of kind of the low impact usage that they have for the site right now. And just wanted to point out a couple pictures. So this is kind of a picture looking east, the one on the right, kind of looking down the drive. Again, you can see the gate there. This is looking at the east residence right there, just adjacent to them. This is their facility on site. So there's an office, and there's just a little bit of a storage building there. A few vehicles, you can see those are probably employees that park there, and then I think in the back you can kind of see that Scooby-Doo pickup truck. The picture on the right, forgive me, it's kind of hard to see, but there is storage of the party buses that you can kind of see there and some other different equipment just on site there. These are kind of the recent improvements after going through planning commission, just what the owner has kind of heard, what they're needing to do to the site. So like Philip mentioned, there is the entry gate. So they made it automated. So you go up to the mailbox, punch in the key, you're able to drive on in. They also posted some signs not to block the access drive. So that was kind of a unique situation where vehicles kind of backed up. So they're trying to mitigate that problem by installing this automated gate as well as some signs just to keep the traffic going through there so there's no backup. They've also, there's no obligation, but there were some potholes they decided to fill as well. So they've been trying to, help the access there, and they continue to want to improve the area as well. A photo that's not shown here is they did install a fence just abutting the east property or that residence there, so they kind of helped, created a new fence for that location. So, so in summary, they're not wanting to do anything different. They're just wanting to get into compliance. So they are just going through this process right now. It's been through council twice, so they're just trying to seek approval, get it done one last time since it wasn't done the last two times. It is very unique just due to the access, but it needs something small scale. The business that they have now, it's going to have that small scale, low impact development. They've done a number of things to the PUD, like Philip mentioned, and they just, with approval, they want to just continue what they're doing on site today. So I don't stand for any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions from the board?
I got a question, Joey. Yes. You know, you talk about the status quo and we don't want to add anything else. So I'm just curious, in the PUD, if you want to keep the status quo and not do residential, why add the residential duplex as a use as well as vehicle equipment sales and outdoor rental and sales of equipment?
Well, like Philip mentioned, it's looking at the future, you know. Right now, there's this whole conditional use, and they're trying to update it to what it is now. But also, not knowing what the future is going to bring with the property to the west, to the church. So just keeping that open to anything that could possibly happen in the future.
So when we decide on zoning, we need to keep in mind that those uses very well could happen, not necessarily status quo. Correct? Correct.
Any other questions?
You explained a little bit about the platting, but I'm still confused. So the property is currently unplatted, right? But it was supposed to be platted? But isn't platted and residential, like, I thought if you platted land, it would be for residential. Is that not what platted means? Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, platting is basically bringing it up to a new and drawn standard. So in a very simple way of thinking, like, platted land is something that is officially drawn into the record. You don't have a lot and block designation, because right now, if you were to look at the official legal description of it, it'd be like X amount of feet southwest of this quarter section, whatever. When you plat it, you officially draw it on the records, and it gets a subdivision name, it gets a lot and block legal description, whether it's commercial uses or residential uses at the time of platting, they can break it up into small lots. This would be platted as one single lot. If they were to plat it as residential, it would be broken into however many lots that fit there. So yeah, platting is something that goes along with residential, commercial, and the standards of the county and city work together on is basically any, even out in unincorporated cities and counties, any new building permits are full with some exceptions. Don't ask me what those are, I don't know. There are some exceptions, but any new building permits are full that require you to be platted.
Okay, so it doesn't require you to like, or it doesn't require infrastructure.
No.
Like, you're
They
not
would
having to
review
put in.
right, they would review the infrastructure as part of the process, and then they review, depending on what uses there, this probably has, public sewer along to maybe, you know, if you're out on the outskirts of the city or right there, they may have to extend sewer, they have infrastructure to look at as part of the plan.
Okay, so platting is just like a legal document, nothing physical happens to the land. Okay, that's what I was confused about.
I have a question about the traffic counts. It says 8.6 per day now, right? Correct. Say if there's houses, there's 14 houses, it's a little over 8 per house.
Correct.
Math didn't really work for me.
There's us.
8 per house.
Well, no, I'm saying they took a traffic count of their traffic currently.
Yeah.
And it's about 8.6 vehicles per day on average.
Yes, it's more.
Currently.
How many businesses there too?
I mean, they have a spreadsheet that they've kind of worked through, and they have the traffic counts that they've been tracking what's coming in and out per day. There's less on the weekends, of course. I think average was 1 to 3 vehicles on the weekends, since this is more of a business operation, of course.
I mean, it's important to speak to the size of businesses too. They're very, very small. It's more of a placeholder for the business than an actual place of business. So,
Just for everyone.
Just help. You the applicant.
yeah, we're the applicants, so between the two of us, and I mean, there's 3 employees that frequent the property, so two ways, we will,
We got too many conversations. You try to answer the question.
Yes.
Sorry, sir, go ahead.
so your question was the the number of employees that come through with the traffic of the businesses. Really, the pet waste removal company is the only one that has employees, 2 employees that come in the property in the morning, grab the company vehicle, go to work, come back in the evening. And then there's one other lady that works there in the office. So the other businesses, they're not like, so the bus business, we built 1 bus there since we've been there. It's really not fair to say the business operates there. We have 2 buses parked there right now, and they're just there because there's space. When we do build them, like I said, we built 1, we've been there 3 years now. So very, very low use businesses.
Your name,
My name is Jason Bayless.
okay. We'll have to take questions from the audience. Start first. Anything else? Start first with Philip. You don't have any questions. Thank you. Second round, anyone? We're going to allow 3 minutes. And please don't repeat anything somebody else has already said. So, second round, anyone? No. Third round? State your name and address. Sure. You got 3 minutes. You want to
Yeah, I'm sorry, because we are broadcasting on Facebook Live, if anybody else would like to speak, we need you to come up to the podium. So you can already start getting in line to your after, right, speak it up.
Okay, you're on the spot.
Okay, I wasn't planning on that. That's okay. My entire backyard faces the property, and I can tell you there is a very big difference between when Kirk Excavating owned the property and the current owners. The fencing has been down since they took over. Several panels lied on our grass for months until my husband finally pushed it back over to their side. Obnoxious weeds, no response when I contacted them multiple times. In Kirk Excavating, they were very much responsive and good neighbors. They say nothing's being dumped there. There's currently a pile to it'd be the west side of the building, and it is the who and do whatever that has been dumping there. There is currently a pile there, and my husband saw it, dirt. I don't know why a food truck would have dirt, but I'm not even, I didn't go trespass for to investigate, but there is things being done there. The golf cart business, kids racing golf carts around the back like it's a racetrack. And like I said, the owners, no responses. They just haven't been good neighbors, and to me, past behavior is a wonderful indication of future behavior. And so I think giving them this open license to whatever they want to do back there, there's no one watching it, there's no one supervising it, the businesses are allowed to go, people are allowed to go, and they are not responsible neighbors. So we are going to protest it. My husband has COPD, and the fact that they now are talking about pain and stuff greatly concerns me.
Thank you. Next, anybody else in that room? Okay, let's go.
What's the dispute, what she said to me?
So this would be your chance, because he doesn't ask anybody on the road. If you want to get up and speak, you should now.
I'm not a Julie wife of Nathan. The other thing I'm going to dispute is there's not a pile of anything except for glass clippings because you have somebody that actually knows the unused 3 acres of land. There are not golf carts racing over there. There aren't any golf carts actually being used. I think 4th of July, maybe the kids were out there and they've used them before, but it's not a racetrack or whatever you're trying to say. And if she would like to provide the phone numbers of who she called, that would be very helpful because we've tried to contact many people and they have not returned phone calls at all. So we're not trying to be adversary to you or not respond to you. We just need to know what you called because we didn't hear from you. That would be it.
Okay. Thank you. Name it.
And I live at 1905 Queens Road. I'm the property adjacent. So I was gonna ask you, Philip or Joey, they both said that they're not going to expand, but yet I also was told, Philip said that this was gonna create more jobs. So how would you create more jobs if you're not going to expand? The other point is the fact that, as you heard, most of that's a gravel drive. So up until like a month, 2 weeks or so, I guess actually, prior to the last meeting is when they finally filled the pothole. It had been like that forever. We do all the mowing along the fence line. And so the fact that earlier when I was asking about the capacity for roads, since that's a gravel road, there's more than 8.6 vehicles per day. We live there, we see it, and on the 4th of July every year, it's probably over 100 vehicles. So that's no joke. The fact also that, like she was saying, there's a lot of discrepancies here as far as what's being presented and what actually is realistic. There's piles of junk along our fence line because there's only about, I think, 60 feet or so of actual privacy fence. The rest of it is chain link. So we get to look at piles of trash and junk and dump trucks and multiple vehicles and buses that are being stored back there. There's also, especially in camping and boating season, there's multiple vehicles that are picking up their boats and their campers, and they'll be lying in my driveway blocking us. And now that they have the keypad, now there's just vehicles that will park there while they punch in the number and wait for the gate to slowly open. And we've had people parking in our driveway multiple times. So about a month ago, I had someone parking in my driveway. He sat there for probably a good 10 minutes until I went out, and he said, well, I don't have access to get into the gate. It was changed, I wasn't told. So I still have people parking in our driveway, so that blocks my son's, any visitors I have from parking in my own driveway. It's just all frustrating. Like I said, I haven't even tried speaking with NKDC because things that were presented at the last meeting were untrue because Brian Lindebach said that there's not a dump truck over there. There's been a dump truck over there for over a year. The pictures that were presented to you are over a year old. Nothing is actually what it is. And that's the discrepancies is what's really frustrating too, because this picture's being painted as if
10 seconds.
Okay. Anyway, if you would just please consider the fact that this is a commercial property they've been operating for over 2 years and not been stopped. So if you're actually PUD, which is one of the least restricted zones, then who knows what they could do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You ask, like, let's speak.
Sam Deidrin, 1864 North Warwick Court, and I live along the south property line over there. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you asked if we don't say something that someone has already said, but I just want to kind of reiterate the fencing issue. That part of that fence is, it's really leaning from the north wind from when Kirk put it up, and everyone in our neighborhood tries to maintain a nice lawn. I can't even walk with my mower along that thing because it's leaning so bad. I'd just like that to be repaired. However, I guess my question to you is, you mentioned the fencing and the screening. Is there a plan to redo that fence? That's my question. And then I know she mentioned the weeds. Yeah, I don't know why you guys just don't put down some weed killer and take care of the problem, because the weeds get about 3 feet high, and then they hire this guy that comes over with his mower, and he doesn't live there, work there, whatever. He sprays the weed stuff off, towards our yard when he goes by, and that bothers me. So that's basically my comments. Thank you.
Sam? Anyone else on the road here?
My name is Gordon Kirkbride. I live at 1824 Rock Court, and right across the street from Sam. My question is, if these guys have been operating business for 3 years already, and now they're just now wanting to change, what guarantee do I get that they're not going to build anything else in that zone? A bigger business, or what's it going to do to my property value? I don't know that. What guarantee do I have that you guys will follow up on making sure they don't build anything more? Just questioning logic in it, because you're there. They've been there 3 years, and now all of a sudden they want to change the zoning law. Why now? Why didn't you just leave it alone and forget about it? You know, we're just checking anyway, so that's all I got to say.
Anyone else in the room? Last row?
Honestly, living in red lines on paper. I'm Brian. And Corey has pictures, recent pictures of the property that I've been sending to him. No, continue sending them. And I'd just like to say that I don't know why something hasn't been done sooner. And if you were to buy a property and not even know what the zoning is, but then operate as a general commercial property this entire time, no, I don't know if anybody's come out and find them or anything. I mean, how would you like if your neighbor just parked in your driveway and now they're operating their commercial property next door and the city is not doing anything? They've been contacted several times. So I don't know what to do. I know that we can't approve this. It's ridiculous. You know, there's more than 4 businesses operating out there as of right now. There's also a construction company. Who knows how many more in the future? So. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Any questions from the board?
How is it they were in business like that? Too much backlog of violations or RFP?
My understanding is that I should know better. My understanding that is in the zoning enforcement office that zoning enforcement is done primarily on a complaint basis. So we literally have 2, one for each side of the city. So we don't have the staff to go around and look at things. I do know that they are responsive when they do receive complaints. I don't fully recall if this attempt to rezone is based off of a complaint and the citing of the property. The applicant can speak to that, but I do know that the zoning enforcement office is aware that this property has been operating illegally. When it is going through the process of rezoning, they back off until the process is over, and if this were to be denied, then they were fully aware that these commercial uses would have to cease. So that's kind of that. Related to landscaping and fencing, all of that would have to be brought up. I believe they're probably just waiting until if this is approved, then they would be required to put the screening fences in. They'd be required to put in the landscaping that the plan says. So anything that's lacking right now is just kind of in the holding bed, waiting and seeing if this property gets rezoned. Because as it is right now, if it gets denied, if it stays single family residential, they're not required to have that screening fence put up. They're not required to put those landscaping buffers in.
What's a 6 foot?
6
Wood.
foot wooden fence,
Oh,
just like
like
your standard privacy fence. Yeah.
It's good if you can use plastic. It doesn't have to be wood, it just has to be solid.
Correct, solid screen.
On the east and south.
All 4 property lines. The east and the south, the east, west, and south have portions. The full western property line doesn't have one at all. There's a portion of the east property line, last time I was out there, that was missing some, and there's pockets of the south property line that need to be repaired.
Would that mitigate some of the concerns? Just looking at about the junk and stuff.
No, the 6 feet is not high. It's only 6 feet.
So that's a standard zoning requirement in the city from residential to commercial. 6 foot is the minimum standard. Now, if someone wants to go over that, that's on their own. Minimally, they just have to put 6 foot between single-family residential and commercial. So,
Could be negotiated.
could be negotiated, right?
The zoning code does say 6 to 8 foot. It was just stated as 6 foot and as Councilmember Fry stated, it is a minimum. With the landscaping buffers, in addition to the screening, we did not feel an 8-foot fence was required.
Because of the trees.
So has anyone from your office been out to the site?
I was the one who actually took those pictures.
So those are current pictures.
As of early November, early October, I don't remember when I was there, but I did take them prior to the planning commission because we do present pictures of all zoning cases to the planning commission. And Joey and Brian went back to the KEC asked if I would supply them with the pictures that presented for the planning commission.
And is that the meeting that Ms. Hammond was talking about?
In November.
And it is stated in those pictures. Those are not current, those were not current pictures. And one of the vehicles that was in those pictures, we sold months before November. So those were not current pictures.
Those are current pictures.
No, they're not.
Yeah, so it's just a research.
I bring in proof of when we own that vehicle.
And then what, so to speak to the other answers?
Hold on.
Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, you guys had another answer question? We are here because of the complaint. Just, we're not here to change anything. We're here to be good. I've never been called a bad neighbor. So, we inherited a poorly designed fence. We've made repairs. Happy to do more repairs. We do more issues. We do spray as much as we can. That stuff does grow. This year we had a lot of rain, so it was really tough to keep all that overgrowth. The pile of debris or whatever is grass clippings from mowing. So we really do try to be good neighbors. We have no intent to build anything larger. This is a very expensive process for us, so we do want to include everything we can in the zone change, just in case 10 years from down the road, we sell the property, or as they spoke to the plans of the city, it allows for those types of items anyway. So we're just thinking long-term for that because of the expense of the rezoning. But yeah, I mean, we're not looking to, I understand the concerns of his. I would personally like to help address those concerns. I think those are valid. I mean, yeah, we want to build a warehouse or anything, or big industrial. Yeah, absolutely not. So we relied on some of the recommendations from KEC on how to word this, how to write all this out. So it is frustrating to get up here and be painted in such a bad light. But I know Nathan spends a great deal of time over there. Didn't have to build potholes in. He's done that. We've gone above and beyond to reach out to the property next to us to see what else we can do to help. And everything that's been brought up, we've addressed. So if there was any more that we could do, fence issue that you shared, happy to take care of it. That's not something that we're trying not to. We inherited that fence. It's a shared fence, but again, we'd be more than happy to do our part on any of those concerns that you guys have.
Is that fence repairable or is it?
Sure, yeah, I mean, it's a pricey fence that I don't understand. It's repairable, probably better in some instances, you just started from scratch, because some of that wood is aged, so it's near the end of its life. There is a large, nice tree row there, but in the fall, when the leaves fall, it's a little easier to see through that. But again, you're looking on to mostly 3 acres of just open grass. But up against the building, we do have vehicles and some mixed use materials up there from the business that we operate. So it's also important to note that this building's been used like this for 50 years, and the houses have grown up around it. And so now all of a sudden they don't like it. They'd like for that property to be something else, but that's what it is. And if this doesn't work out, I mean, we can still use the conditional use permit and run 50, 60 dump trucks through there every day. No intention of doing that. But they're saying that's what you have to do. If you want to use this property as it's zoned right now, is you need to use it as a working company or put a bunch of houses there. We don't want to do either one of those. We don't think either one of those are better uses for the property or would make any of the neighbors happier than what, we continue to operate the property like we do, but do it in a better neighborly fashion. It's very open to doing it.
Would the neighbors be happy if the trees there with the 8-foot fence and the shrubbery?
Well, the tree was gonna take several years for the deciduous trees actually grow into one another to actually, provide a screen.
How about the fence?
The 8-foot fence and the shrubbery landscape, would that water through?
If that was the case, and then at the last meeting, like the commissioners mentioned, diverting the traffic from the easement over to the church, because back when that easement was written up, the church wasn't in existence, it wasn't built until the 2000s. So, since the commissioner, one of the commissioners mentioned that, we agree that's a really good idea. So that's what we'd like to see, is that traffic diverted over to Pathway Church, because that's all paved. And then across the screen.
It's a private drive too. So they're already ready to it.
Private drive.
I read
It's a private drive. They would have to agree to it.
And you asked if we'd be satisfied, and tonight's the first time they've shown any concerns with the developments. And we're not talking to small, we're talking to large communities.
They were honest, and we know these are so we're happy. We didn't know, we also,
And that shows that nobody's ever on the property and see what happened. So,
There's another box with the fence, along the map.
that's because he would be shut in or through the, so, through the back property. That was sort of the, allowed it to the fence down on the other. The 8-foot fence is in place around 4 areas there, is that specified for neighbors?
I don't trust them to.
Well, once it's written, it has to be a word. Well,
But right now, they're running the business.
That's what we're trying to mitigate right now with the zoning. Yeah, 2 seconds, stay right there.
I think that you asked the question, would the neighbors be satisfied? I think there are different concerns from our different locations, that we have. Obviously, they live right there on the access road. Totally different perspective and set of problems and what I do. And you talk about, fencing. Make us satisfied. From my perspective, it would surely help. And I agree with you guys inherited the fence that Kirk put up, which, for a company like Kirk, I was somewhat disappointed myself. Yes, it's not good. So, the fencing, you talk about the screening, again, from only my perspective, that way.
Would you have him link up an 8-foot fence on the east and south sides?
So we already have on the east side, but there is some space where we can continue to finish, which we plan on doing. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's already part of the agreement.
But 8 foot, not 6 foot.
Oh, 8 foot. So I believe right now it's a 6-foot fence with an 8-foot addition, is that right? Like a lattice addition?
We put a lattice.
So
That's the problem.
so it's 6 foot lattice.
It's almost 8 foot now. 6 foot privacy, and then, yeah. But it's not. Yeah, it's a long stretch of fence too, so we're happy to continue to make it 8 foot, but to go in there from a budget standpoint and redo the whole entire fence, it takes time, yeah.
I like to point out that we also pay commercial taxes on property. We always have been, so taxes that so it's tax higher than everybody else around, significantly, and we continue to pay those as well.
So what happens if we deny this?
Uh,
How will
that-
they operate any differently? How will-
So your recommendation would be to Councilmember Fry for the city council proceeding. So your recommendation is to the city council. This case would go to planning commission on Thursday. They would provide a recommendation This case ultimately goes to city council anyway. City council has the authority to approve or deny zoning. I don't remember if planning commission were to approve it and district advisor were to deny it. I don't know if that requires a higher vote from it does not. It would only be if it's protested. So regardless, it would be always going to city council, and city council would take in the recommendation from both the saying, this is what planning commission said, this is what the district advisory board said, and they would have to assimilate all that information to determine what their final decision would be, whether to approve or deny it. If it's protested with the 20% lane area, it would require a 6 to 7 vote to approve or deny. We have had cases in the past where they failed to reach 6 to 7 votes either way, and it just fails for the lack of a motion, which basically means it's more or less denied, and they would have to cease operation. If it's denied, they have to cease. If it doesn't get approval and it just dies for a lack of consensus,
So they'd have to move, like.
they would have to cease their operation.
Well, we would
Commercial
have two options, as I understand it, and we could develop it with multiple homes, or find a tenant who has a paving company, excavation company, dirt working, and so you can just
They
involve
can continue
all the
using
construction
land
like
as a conditional use allows as well.
Those are the two current uses allowed, the agricultural storage operation that so or and then also as SF5, you could put multi-family or
Single
multiple
house.
houses, single family on the property with no other access code. So they could do that right now.
You need a single family permit or access.
It depends on, I think, if it's, the number of dwelling units is under 30, one access is allowed.
We could do 130 units.
Yeah, I don't think you could fit 30 units in there.
That one is not for
Is that drive under a maintenance community agreement between all three properties?
I believe, I haven't dug into the depths of it, but I believe that Joey said that as it was written, it is under the responsibility of the homeowner of Ms. Hemming's property. I think they are the ones who have the sole responsibility legally.
Yeah.
So that resident-
You would have done that if you wanted to bought something.
All of them, all of the parties, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. A lot of times what they do is do maintenance, all parties to access that road, which is probably more fair.
Right.
So you're,
That's not the case.
yeah, that's
They're
another issue.
They're solely responsible.
Right, and we don't have as much traffic as they do.
Right.
Like I said, there's much more than 8.6 per day.
Right, but that was the easement, if you purchased the property, that was the easement that was there. So it is your responsibility regardless of how many vehicles are going through there. That's what I'm hearing.
We would have to maintain it.
Right.
The dump trucks are going through there.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying, the more traffic, the more maintenance it requires.
This is, dump trucks going through there, you're gonna have a big problem.
So Joey, or Philip, maybe you can answer this. So when this is platted, I don't know what the current drive width is. We have driveway standards.
17 feet.
And the current standards is 20 feet. So when you guys plat this, and I know we're not there yet, what are you going to do for the improvements of the drive to get it to fire code?
Well, I don't think there's any intentions to plat it right away because they're not going to be building any new buildings or anything like that. So they're just wanting to get their them up to compliances. So that's the plan right now. In the event that they do want to build another building, then they'll be able to apply. But yeah, I don't think we're there at all. So there's no intention to widen that drive. That access drive is correct.
So you could,
30-foot wide easement will specify.
so with the current buildings right now, they could cease their operations of their 4 or 5 businesses and open a vehicle and equipment sales if this passes. And use the existing buildings and not plat. Is that correct?
Correct.
Which would increase traffic likely.
That was a
But it
slip.
wouldn't have to be platted.
That was a slip.
No.
It's not excluded, it's actually added, not excluded.
No.
Vehicle sales
Oh,
is
that's
actually
the
gone.
Our small under vehicle sale is a problem.
Even though we don't have street sale them.
There is compatibility.
I understand that. But when you guys are around in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that could be sold and actually used as vehicle sales. That's what we have to look at. I think you guys are honest, and I understand that you want to keep the status quo. We have to look at the future when you're not around. And that could be vehicle sales. So.
We have no problem picking verbiage that it can be a car game. But the golf cart,
Yeah, I guess
golf
it
cart
was-
didn't fit into anything, so we had to use that terminology, but we're not against limiting people who still has restrictions that they can't operate a car dealership or sell cars out there or something like that. That's not what we're looking for. It's just, that's what it fit into for golf carts, because they were vehicles.
We'd be open to asking, our advisors if there was a way to go in there and alter that legend, that something's valid.
Can I speak to the, when this is established, the Kirk family did own it, we had full season, we did a letter of analysis of the whole entire property, with these entire thing. The easements were granted to each of the properties around, and the property we actually have a broader easement that was for the enjoyment and use for anything and everything, it's not restricted. When they bought the property in 2014, these easements came with the property. It was already there, Kirk Excavation had it, she uses Dr. Barrett's driveway to get to her property, and doesn't maintain that property for him. Nothing in the states that we're supposed to maintain it, and actually, from the Supreme Court cases, is there to maintain it. This is kind of what they took when they purchased the property from a foreclosure. They have to pay the taxes, they have to maintain it, and we're not looking for them to do all that. But it's been a few times of why are we not doing it? It's because they got the property subject to these easements. And the point of the easements was to always have the enjoyment fulfillment to the subject property. It was purposely done for what we understand for the development of the property later. So it's not that we're not trying to, this is what she wants.
But just as you bought the property, now that fence was down and needed repairs and all of these other
Well, I
things,
can-
and it was not.
I can repair a fence, I can repair a fence, I can repair a fence. You can't, I mean, you can't.
Okay, I think we've got a good gist of what's. Any other final comments? Okay. Is there a motion? Trevor, you want to take a shot at one? I know.
So again, what I'm hearing is that there is some desire to find some common ground here between everyone, try to make this work. So hopefully, as we get through this tonight, and we can go to the planning commission meeting on Thursday, there's an opportunity to continue discussion and find that common ground. Again, the motion that Trevor's working out helps me. Helps me as again, what will happen at planning commission. So in the spirit of that.
So the fence and the landscaping and the trash and everything, I think that will be taken care of. So when it gets done with the maintenance, that's the point of the zoning. So all the maintenance and cleanup is actually taken care of and enforceable at that point. So I'm not necessarily opposed to that, and I'm not necessarily opposed to the status quo. I do have concerns with the development guidelines 2E, especially with all the things that were added, the duplex, the assisted living, the church parking, vehicle sales, outdoor vehicle, limited general, outdoor rental and sales equipment, rental sales and all that stuff. So I do have an issue with that. So I would probably motion to approve based on the elimination or the rewording of that 2B. I'm okay with office warehouse and everything that is omitted into A, but I would probably omit most of 2B.
Or rework it.
Or rework allow specific golf cart instead of vehicle for various, if you want, if you want some outdoor rental sales, what's that equipment going to be? You have any. So. Motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Based on omitting 2B or change 2B to motions.
Anyone else like to comment on?
I don't know how much we can do for bad neighbors, So I have a
So
motion.
by putting in the zoning requirement that they're asking, then it becomes enforceable
Okay,
beyond what's there now.
okay.
Eliminate a lot of it.
So for instance,
They have to-
Rachel, like events, like right now, between your neighbor and you, it's kind of, you guys can argue all day.
There's no code requirement.
But now there's a code requirement that this owner of this property is responsible for a 6-foot fence. And I believe it says it in here somewhere. If somebody can tell me exactly where it's at, but it says in here about they're responsible for the maintenance and construction of a 6-foot fence, or the zoning becomes void.
Right. So then it's removed and they can't operate. So there is teeth in this way.
Okay, Trevor, there's been a motion.
Say one thing. So, as far as admitting the whole TV, we will definitely rework it. But there are some other uses in there that I think are very important for in the future. The church, there's a church just north, so I don't think we can omit that whole TV. But we will definitely look at the vehicle repair and rework it for specific to golf carts and the party bus. That's as well. I just don't want it.
So if your motion on 2B is more specific to the vehicle sales and repair, you're okay with that?
I don't think, well, I don't really necessarily like outdoor rental sales of equipment or duplex. So if we're gonna do duplex, why don't we just duplex and
Yeah, but they do.
it's gonna, if we do duplex.
For single family or duplex or that duplex?
It's not.
You have to change. It's just-
You want duplex, go for it.
So they have to
Go to process.
I think it helped me to understand what the end goal is. Like, are you just trying to make sure that we don't have a lot of customers coming in?
If
That-
you
that-
sell
that's
the
easy.
property, we're trying to.
No, I don't even any future, if you don't want a future tenant to open up like a car lot or something, is that, or even like an equipment, like customers coming and bring equipment? Okay.
To reduce, I think the goal is to reduce the traffic.
Right.
And what I just heard from earlier, when Joey made his presentation, was we were talking about single family homes, and that's gonna increase and all the issues that would come with it.
Sure.
Well, the duplex was added, and that's gonna double that. So we can't say residential is bad, and then specifically on duplex, in my opinion. If that's what you guys want, then let's talk about duplex and like that.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
We have.
I want to read. There's your motion. You got your motions or your motion? I just want to amend it to add in a recommendation for an 8-foot fence.
On all perimeter or just the south side or south east?
Well, probably just the east and the south, since those are actually the neighbors, but the rest of it's. I don't know. I don't know where we are, just the south and the east side.
So we have a motion, no second. Amendment. No second.
Yeah, confusing.
So what do we do? Do we second the motion first? Yeah,
Second.
second.
Second on the amended motion. It's a recommendation to our council.
So we're adding Trevor and Alyssa's together?
And if it fails, then we will on my motion. But if it passes, then it doesn't.
I deny.
Anybody like to second the
Amendment, you want to second the amendment to add a vote on the south and the east? Well, we're back to the part.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay. Okay, so now we have, which you can have that for you.
What are we? I
That was,
don't
he's
know.
gonna read it back.
Okay, so the bigger motion to add a fence on the east and south side. Adding that to approve based on the bidding or changing to be.
Specifically related to
Multi-family
vehicle sales and outdoor use. Right. Not eliminating, but changing that. Makes that pretty cool. Is that what you're saying?
So it's a motion.
It's a recommendation.
This is not one.
Right.
It's not mine. It's not mine.
It's a recommendation. But this is stuff that you can work on between now and Thursday.
Specifically,
Right. Yeah, this stuff will all get regurgitated.
Outdoor.
Or small, other.
Small utility.
Okay. Motion to approve based on changing to B, specifically omitting from 2E duplexes, outdoor rentals, vehicle sales, changing those to be specific to homes. Or whatever, yes, yes.
Does he need airports?
I think so. Specific to her uses.
Okay. Does everyone understand the motion?
Yeah.
I seconded it. Okay. Vote as a recommendation. Councilman Fry. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
So, again, appreciate all the dialogue. I know these are difficult, especially when it's neighbor to neighbor, and trying to figure out a very convoluted case history. So, encourage you all to continue to work together, and hopefully by Thursday, we'll have a plan everyone can live with. So, thank you. And do start talking to each other.
Send somebody to keep
We're adjourned.